Hello and welcome to Planeswalker Plus. I'm your host, Alice Clark, and today I'm joined by Liam and Oz. Hey guys.
Hey Alice.
So today we are going to talk about cubes. Not those weird little square things that you throw at people, but Magic the Gathering cubes. So let's start with the big question of what is a cube in Magic the Gathering?
Well, as I see it, a cube is a collection of cards that you draft, but that collection is something that you've made yourself rather than have wizards make for you.
Good answer.
So normally if you draft, everyone gets 3 boosters and you open them, you pick your cards, and you're drafting that set. With Cube, you can go, oh, I like that set, I'll make a cube based on that. Or I like Ravnica, the Plains, I want to make a cube about Ravnica. Or I like big creatures. And so you can customize it completely and make it however you want to make it.
Yeah, that's the main thing. Yeah.
So Liam, what you're saying is that after this, I should get Prospect to make me a Hydras versus Vampires Selesnya cube?
You could do that. I mean, the cube is for drafted by 8 people, so it's not like building a deck. You need to. It's a lot more involved than that. And Oz has a cube.
Yes, I do.
Yes.
So my
I
cube.
still think a Vampire Hydra cube could be really fun to draft. But yes, tell us about your cube and not my dreams.
So the cube I have is Pauper, which is a format based on using only commons printed in Magic. So commons, it doesn't mean draft shaft. Lightning bolts are common, counter spells are common. Diabolic edict is a common. So it's still a powerful cube, and it feels like a really powerful draft set when you draft it. It's probably a little bit more powerful than the decks you make out of it than a normal draft, like for a new set.
So basically you can decide what you want to be in there, and if you don't want there to be really stupid cards that people can beat you with, or want stupider cards that people can beat you with weirdly, you can just make that happen?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, cool. So
Cube is one of those formats where like people were like, oh, I really like combos. I want to have like lots of infinite combos. And people are like, no, I hate those. You can't have them. I'm not going to put them in the cube. So it's your play style, your group's play style. You can kind of inform that. Yeah.
I've played a cube with a friend of mine whose cube was just red and blue. So it was all storm cards and counter spells and bolts and goblins and weird blue tempo decks, and yeah, that's all the cube was.
That sounds awesome. So what should people be looking for when building their cube? What are some do's and don'ts?
A big thing with my cube is removal. If you put too much removal in there, nothing sticks to the board. So some of the best removal spells have been made commons, like, Doomblade and Lightning Bolt, things like that. So you've got to be really careful you don't skew it too much like that. And also, it's really hard to try and make some strategies work. Like Infect is something really hard with Cube because you have to draft every Infect creature and every bump spell. And if you just don't get that redundancy of those effects.
It's one of those things where you're designing the different themes and what's involved in the cube. So you've got to have like it's a draft, so there's 8 different people. So you can't just have like, I really like say vampires. Like vampires are great, but like if 8 people are drafting, it's like, well, how do we make it so that decks are interesting and different, and that multiple people are going to have different decks, and you also want to be able to do it so that like, okay, I'm drafting this, and I'm going to draft this for another time because the cube is like a replayability. So you can't have it so that just every time I draft exactly the same deck because that gets boring. You got to try and make it so there's a lot of different themes, different decks you can draft, and make it interesting for all the players.
So if you're building a cube, does that make it cheaper or more expensive than playing with booster drafts every week? Because it seems like there's a lot of variables there.
I reckon overall it might be cheaper. If you use what you already have, if you start at that point, It might not be a strong cube. It might not have heaps of archetypes, but it'll still be fun to draft those old cards that you've got lying around. And if you start at that point and then just add to it whenever a new set comes out, add to it when you're trading with other people, other cards, the cube will eventually build on itself. And a cube is something that's never finished. It's always evolving. Every time there's a new set, whether it be a standard set or a commander set or an outside of those, like an internal set, it's always evolving. And whenever you trade, it's like, oh, that'd be really good in cube, or you'll find something in a your draft box that looks really interesting for this thing I'm trying to do in my cube. The initial cost does ramp up though when you're trying to store the cube and protect it, because for a cube, it's around about 360 cards, sometimes more, plus lands, which is a lot of sleeves and a lot of boxes.
Yeah, that would get pretty intense. How do you have your cube stored?
I just have the normal cardboard boxes that they use, but I do have expensive dragon shields to protect it.
That's good.
It's also one of the things where you can have, you notice that during the draft, everyone is always first picking this sort of card. Maybe we want to swap it around, or no one's picking this card. Well, let's get rid of that and put something else in. So yeah, as I was saying, it evolves all the time.
Yeah, I know in my cube I had Him to Turok in it, and it was just such a feel bad when someone would do that on you turn 2 and your 2 lands would go. So I took that out of the cube, put in something similar, Wrenchmind, but yeah, Him to Turok was just too strong for Pauper. And the other thing with the cube too, like banned cards, you can put one, like, because most cubes are singletons, so it's just one of every card. You can put in cards that have been banned in formats that you enjoyed playing, just as a one-off. So I've got Peregrine Drake in mine, I've got Gush, I've got Daze, and the feel bads for those, if there's only one of them, isn't as bad.
So what are some of the online services you can use for Cube, as well as like Cube Tutor, to organize your cube or even to play with other people online while stuck in ISO?
Well, Magic Online actually does cube quite often. So they have various different cubes from like Vintage to Pauper that they'll highlight and you can play online. So that's one way to do it. There's also a whole bunch of resources about how to build cubes. Lots of forums. The professor, who's a Magic YouTuber, does a whole bunch of videos. There's a whole bunch of resources about how to build cubes. You can ask people for advice. People can playtest your cube. There's a whole bunch of stuff online for that.
That's awesome. So do you need to have real life friends to play with a cube, or is there a way to get strangers involved, or just play with 5 of your best ventriloquist dummies?
So Magic Online is definitely the way to go if you don't have a group of friends you can play with in person. But I've gone to Magic events like playing Legacy, and it gets to top 8. So the people who've done the best are still playing, and everyone else is like, "Oh, we're finished for the day. Does anyone want a cube?" And you're like, "Okay, cool. Let's just randomly draft." And you can make friends that way. There's also like communities. I know there's like I played Oz's Cube before, and that was posted in like a Facebook group. It's like, hey, it's this side of Melbourne, Cube fans, and someone will go, hey, I'm hosting this Cube at this store. Come play on this day.
That's awesome. So it's the magic of Magic coming together in cube form.
Exactly.
But I think the most important question is, why is it called a cube? The cards are rectangles.
There's so many Magic deck names that don't make sense or are based on like a joke that someone made once. There's a Legacy deck called Death and Taxes, which is because the only things that are certain in life are death, taxes, and someone playing White Weenie. So that became the name Death and Taxes. And there's also a whole bunch of other sort of names like that. I think it's probably someone just like, hey, here's my cube. And then that was the name for it.
Cool. And unrelated to cubes, how have you been playing Magic during ISO when you can't do all the usual things you do?
I've been playing a little bit of Arena, but I'm not a huge fan. I think part for me, there is a sort of social aspect of it, especially playing like EDH and Commander. I also like the physical game more than the online versions. Trying to hold up a spell in response to something is so annoying online. So I'm just doing that. And also just like, I've been building this cube and like, I've been chatting to Oz, like he's been looking at the cube, sort of offering suggestions. And so there's that back and forwards of like actually building the cube. That's just been really fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been great seeing you, even if only through a computer screen. Tune in next time for more Planeswalker Plus action. Thank you very much, Liam and Oz.
See ya.
See you next time.